You were not born to live quietly. You were not born to dim your fire to make others feel comfortable in the dark. You were not born to blend in, to check boxes, clock and play safe, and leave behind a name no one remembers. But that's what most people do. They're taught from the moment they open their eyes, stay in line, don't reach too far, be realistic. And brick by brick, a cage is built around their potential. It's not made of steel, it's made of stories. You're not that special. People like us don't succeed. Just be grateful you have a job. Dreams are for lucky people. And here's the dangerous part. When you hear something long enough, you don't question it, you become it. That's not programming, that's hypnotism. That's the slow drip of limitation injected into your mind by well-meaning parents, teachers, systems, people who gave you their fear and called it wisdom. But what if they were wrong? What if the life you've been told to settle for was never meant for you? What if you're not broken, just programmed to play small? And what if you could rewrite it? Because you can. Your mind is not a fixed machine. It's a living code, and every thought, every belief, every decision is either reinforcing the old or rewriting the new. And if you don't choose the code, someone else will write it for you. Society will, your past will, fear will, and you'll live in a loop that isn't even yours. Same job, same doubt, same apology for wanting more. But inside you, something else lives, a knowing, a flicker, a voice that whispers, I was made for more than this. And that voice, that's your real self, the version buried beneath years of programming, the one who's still intact even if you've forgotten how to hear it. And today, right now, this is your moment to listen. To pause, to breathe, to choose. Not the safe path, not the predictable path, but the truthful one. Because average isn't a personality, it's a habit. It's a series of small surrenders. The dream not written down, the action not taken, the voice not used, the standard not raised. And the more you make those surrenders, the more your mind adapts to the cage. Until one day, you no longer remember you ever had wings. But you did. You do. And you can remember, you can choose today, this second, to become conscious again. To ask, whose voice is that telling me I can't? Where did I learn that success is dangerous? Why do I think wealth is only for them? That awareness, that's your beginning. Because you cannot change what you are unwilling to question. And questioning, that's rebellion. The rebellion that begins in silence, in stillness, in the decision to stop accepting a life designed by someone else's fear. Because you were not born average. You were born aware, but you were taught to forget. So now you remember. You come back to your fire, to your vision, to your truth. And you say, I will no longer wear beliefs that were never mine. I will no longer dim to fit cages I did not build. I will no longer call survival success. I am not average, I am awake, and I'm ready to rewrite everything. You don't need more motivation, you need a new operating system. Because right now, whether you realize it or not, you're running on a script you didn't write, installed without permission, reinforced through repetition, upgraded only with fear, shame, and mediocrity. You were programmed to stay small. And that programming is subtle, it doesn't scream, it whispers. Don't take the risk. That dream is too big. You're not qualified. You're already too late. Who do you think you are? That's not your voice, that's your conditioning. And conditioning is powerful. It shapes your perception before you ever form a decision. Because when the code is corrupt, even the right opportunity looks dangerous. The right choice feels impossible. The right path looks foolish. You hesitate not because you're lazy, but because you've been taught to doubt your own potential. Think about it. The school system didn't teach you to trust your instincts. It taught you to follow rules, to memorize, to obey, to raise your hand for permission to dream. Your environment didn't teach you to act bold. It rewarded comfort, punished risk, made you afraid of failure as if falling was a flaw instead of a step. And your family, God bless them, they passed on the programming they were given: be safe, don't rock the boat, make us proud by staying the same. So you began to associate change with danger, wealth with corruption, ambition with arrogance, success with separation. But here's the truth they never taught you. Every system, mental, emotional, societal, wants compliance. It does not care about your greatness. It only cares about your predictability. Because the average person who obeys the code is easier to control. They spend their life in reaction mode, reacting to bills, reacting to news, reacting to opinions, reacting to fear. Never questioning, never designing, never leading. That's the point of the code, to keep you predictable, passive, programmed. And you feel it, that quiet frustration, that ache in your chest at night, that moment where the mirror stares back and asks, is this it? That's your soul trying to break the loop. That's your higher self rising through the noise saying, you weren't born for this. You were born to build, not obey, to question, not comply, to create, not conform. But breaking the code comes with consequences. Because once you start thinking for yourself, you become uncomfortable to people still trapped in the loop. They'll call you arrogant. They'll call you crazy. They'll say you changed. And you did. Because you had to. You couldn't stay average and stay honest at the same time. You couldn't keep shrinking and keep breathing at the same time. You couldn't keep betraying your potential just to belong to people who never saw it. So you began to wake up, one belief at a time, one decision at a time, one boundary at a time. You stopped defaulting to yes. You stopped apologizing for wanting more. You stopped pretending that a numb life was a safe one. Because numbness isn't safety, it's surrender. And you're done surrendering. So what now? Now you rebuild the code. You rewire the thoughts. You reject the virus. You install a new belief system, one that reflects truth, not fear. You rewrite it every day with your habits, your standards, your circle, your self-talk. Because the world will keep feeding you garbage code, but you don't have to run it anymore. You are no longer a user. You're the architect. Every belief you hold is either a cage or a key, and most people don't even realize they've been carrying around locks in their mind for years, decades, entire lifetimes. The belief that you have to struggle to succeed, the belief that success belongs to other people, the belief that confidence is arrogant, the belief that you can't change because this is just how I am, the belief that survival is all you're allowed to hope for. But here's the truth. You weren't born with these beliefs, you were taught them. Taught by parents who were scared. Taught by teachers who never chased their own dreams. Taught by systems that didn't want you to question anything. Taught by peers who feared what they couldn't understand. Taught by failure interpreted the wrong way. But beliefs are not laws. They are just scripts, repeated thoughts you've accepted as truth. And like any script, they can be rewritten. The moment you realize that, everything changes. Because if you learn to limit yourself, you can learn to liberate yourself. You can learn to believe that wealth is natural, that confidence is service, that power isn't arrogance, it's alignment, that your future is not defined by your past, that you can build something extraordinary without permission or precedent. But here's what most people get wrong. You don't change your beliefs by forcing positive thoughts. You change them by building new evidence. Because the mind doesn't believe what you tell it. It believes what you prove to it. So if every time you try something new, you quit halfway, your mind learns we don't finish. If every time you want to speak up, you silence yourself, your mind learns we stay quiet to stay safe. If every time you commit to a new habit, you fall back into the old one, your mind learns change isn't real. But the opposite is also true. If you finish what you start even once, your mind records we're a finisher now. If you speak your truth even when your voice shakes your mind, records were allowed to be heard. If you show up consistently even on the days you don't feel ready, your mind records we are disciplined. That's how you rewrite the code. One micro action at a time, one new proof at a time, one decision to show up anyway at a time. This is how transformation happens. Not by waiting for some lightning strike of motivation, not by watching 1,000 videos on YouTube, not by reading another self-help book you don't apply. It happens in the moment you say, I will not live one more day reacting from a belief I didn't choose. And then you act. You get up, you move, you create friction against the old story. You replace the virus with a new line of truth. Because average people wait to feel ready, but extraordinary people act to become ready. And that's the difference. The average mind seeks comfort. The awakened mind seeks alignment. Comfort says let's not do too much. Alignment says let's do what we're called to no matter what it costs. Comfort says let's not get hurt again. Alignment says the hurt taught us. We're stronger now. Comfort says you're doing enough. Alignment says you're not here to do enough. You're here to do what you were born to do. And what you were born to do doesn't live in the script of your past. It lives in the blueprint of your potential. It lives in the part of you that still dreams, still wonders, still aches for more. Not more status, not more validation, more meaning, more truth, more legacy. And that legacy won't be built by accident. It will be built by design, by intention, by the version of you who finally said, the old code ends here, I'm rewriting everything. The most dangerous lie you've ever believed is that your identity is fixed, that you are who you are and that's the end of it, that your personality is permanent, that your traits are truth, that your limitations are somehow in your bloodline. But let's be clear, you are not your history, you are your habitual identity. An identity is not inherited, it's installed. It's shaped through repetition, through story, through the environments that surrounded you before you ever had the chance to choose differently. You were never average. But you were taught to feel average by people who stopped growing before they ever met you. That's the glitch in the system. The people who raised you could only pour from their own programming. And if they were programmed in fear, in lack in conformity, then guess what? So were you. But just because something was installed doesn't mean it has to stay. You have the power to uninstall anything that no longer aligns with who you are becoming. That anger that was inherited, that self-doubt conditioned, that shame absorbed. But none of it is your nature. Your nature is powerful. Your nature is curious. Your nature is expansive. Your nature is limitless. And it's still there beneath the noise, beneath the programming, beneath the personality you wear like armor, because it's the only thing you've ever known. But what if that identity isn't you? What if it's just a mask built for approval, for protection, for survival? What if everything you think you are is just what helped you get by, but now it's keeping you small? Because the truth is, you don't attract success through action alone, you attract success through alignment, and you cannot stay aligned with a version of yourself that was built in reaction. So now the work becomes internal. Not chasing more, but becoming more. Not stacking up achievements, but shedding everything that isn't yours. Because transformation isn't addition, it's subtraction. It's the courage to remove everything you've used to protect yourself from pain so you can finally feel power. It's choosing to say, this version of me helped me survive, but it will not help me rise. So who do you become? You become the version of yourself who acts with intention, who speaks with clarity, who leads with depth, who holds boundaries like a builder holds blueprints. You become the one who wakes up before the doubt creeps in, acts before fear gets a vote, honors their calling even when no one is clapping, speaks even when the voice shakes, holds vision even when the results haven't arrived. Because identity isn't just what you believe about yourself, it's what you demonstrate over and over again. Your habits are the handwriting of your identity, and if you keep writing the same story, you keep living the same life. So change the script, not with declarations, but with decisions. Decide who you are now and then prove it in every moment the old you tries to show up. The old you wants to hit snooze, the new you gets up. The old you wants to people please, the new you holds boundaries. The old you waits for motivation, the new you creates momentum. This is the identity shift. It's not instant, but it is powerful. And once your identity changes, your standards change. And when your standards change, your world changes. Because the world doesn't give you what you wish for, it gives you what you require. And once you start requiring more from yourself, from others, from life, you stop settling. For average, for chaos, for crumbs, for almost. You weren't born to be almost. You were born to be aligned. And now that you remember that, there's no going back. Now that you've begun the shift, you face the greatest test of all. Can you remain aligned when no one is watching? Because transformation isn't loud. It doesn't show up in applause likes or instant validation. Transformation happens in the dark. It happens when you choose discipline over distraction, clarity over chaos, vision over validation. It happens when you choose to repeat who you're becoming until it becomes unshakable. Because most people, they have moments of inspiration. They set goals, they make vision boards, they declare, this is my year. But they don't build systems. They don't build discipline. They don't become the kind of person who can carry the weight of the life they want. They want the breakthrough without the bricks. They want the outcome without the identity infrastructure. But here's the truth. Your dream life is too heavy for your old habits to carry. You can't rise to greatness on the legs of inconsistency. You can't create legacy with the same daily actions that once left you feeling stuck. So what does it take? It takes discipline, not the punishment kind, but the sacred kind. Discipline that honors your vision when motivation dies. Discipline that moves when your feelings don't want to cooperate. Discipline that isn't rooted in pressure but in self-respect. Because when you respect yourself, you follow through. You don't break promises to your future just to comfort your present. You don't negotiate your standards because the world doesn't clap right away. You show up not to impress others but to become someone you admire. And the way you become that person is through design, not default. You build routines that reflect your future, not your past. You structure your day around the identity you're becoming, not the one you've outgrown. You guard your energy like it's sacred because it is. And most importantly, you stop giving energy to what isn't aligned. The wrong people, you release them. The pointless scrolling, you replace it. The distractions, you delete them. The excuses, you rewrite them. Because your future isn't built on your intentions. It's built on your systems. What you repeat, you reinforce. And what you reinforce, you become. So design the repetition, design the rhythm, design the environment. Build mornings that charge you. Build evenings that ground you. Build systems that pull you into alignment so you don't have to push every single day. This is how greatness is built. Quietly, deliberately, ruthlessly. It's not glamorous, it's not trending, it's necessary. Because consistency is the true power move. And here's the most important thing. Consistency is not perfection, it's returning again and again, no matter what. The average person fails once and calls it a sign. You fail and call it a signal. A signal to refine, to upgrade, to recommit. Because you are no longer held hostage by the old code. You're not the person who gives up. You're the one who recalibrates. You're not the person who makes excuses. You're the one who makes adjustments. You're not the one who needs perfect conditions. You're the one who creates momentum from nothing. And that's rare. That's powerful. That's the difference between potential and purpose. Potential is passive. It dreams, it waits, it hopes. Purpose moves. Purpose chooses. Purpose disciplines itself into results. So choose discipline. Choose systems. Choose daily decisions that whisper, "This is who I am now." Because when your standards rise, your life will have no choice but to follow. There comes a moment on this path where you stop needing permission. Not because you became defiant, but because you finally became self-directed. You stop waiting for applause, for consensus, for someone to validate your shift. You stop explaining your standards to people who've never demanded more from life. You stop apologizing for wanting different, not because you're better, but because you've outgrown the cycle. Because let's be honest, most people don't actually fear failure, they fear judgment. They fear being misunderstood. They fear being too much. They fear the silence after speaking their truth. They fear being alone on the path that calls to them. And so they compromise, they settle, they dim, they dilute, until one day they don't recognize themselves. Not because they changed too fast, but because they refuse to. But you've decided that approval is not the goal, alignment is. And here's the truth. Alignment often costs you the crowd, but misalignment costs you yourself. And the price of betraying yourself just to keep the peace is a kind of soul debt that no amount of applause can repay. That's why most people stay average, not because they lack talent, but because they lack the courage to walk alone for a while. But real freedom begins when you stop fearing solitude and start fearing self-abandonment. When you stop molding yourself to match other people's comfort zones and start expanding into your own capacity. Because here's what they never told you. You don't need everyone to understand you. You need you to trust you. You don't need everyone to support you. You need your own consistency to be stronger than their skepticism. You don't need to convince the world you're right. You need to act like you were born for this even when no one claps. Because vision is lonely in the beginning, it will be mocked, minimized, questioned, but only by those who never gave themselves permission to chase what they couldn't yet prove. That's not your burden to carry. Let them stay comfortable. Let them stay familiar. Let them play in the shallow end. You were not born for that water. You were born to go deep. And the deeper you go, the quieter it gets. But don't mistake silence for wrongness. Don't confuse solitude with failure. The cave of transformation is always empty at first, until you fill it with truth, with effort, with devotion. Because that's what this path requires now. Devotion. Not discipline for vanity, but devotion to who you're becoming. Not perfection for approval, but presence with your own evolution. And devotion is different. It doesn't check the clock. It doesn't compare timelines. It doesn't ask, am I ahead of them? It asks, am I faithful to what I said I was building? Because average people chase goals, but extraordinary people commit to growth. And growth isn't always pretty. Sometimes it's invisible. Sometimes it looks like losing friends. Sometimes it sounds like turning down opportunities that aren't aligned. Sometimes growth feels like grief. But let it grieve, let it burn, let it shed. Because every time you choose truth over fitting in, you create space. Space for new energy, new people, new results, new reality. But that new reality will not arrive until the old identity is released. So release it. Let them think what they want. Let them judge what they don't understand. Let them gossip from the bleachers. You've got a life to build, and you won't build it by playing referee in someone else's unhealed projections. You'll build it by walking forward, one clear step at a time, with or without applause, with or without agreement. Because you were not born to be average. You were born to be free. Now that you've stepped into alignment, now that you've stopped waiting for permission, validation, applause, you're finally ready for the next level. And that level is simple. Your life must now match your new identity. No more misalignment, no more pretending, no more 1 foot in, 1 foot out. This is the season where your actions, your standards, your entire lifestyle must begin to mirror the power you've reclaimed. Because it's one thing to think like a new person, it's another thing to act like it. And average people, they stop at awareness. They read the books, they repeat the affirmations, they even feel inspired for a moment. But then they go right back to environments that drain them, back to habits that numb them, back to relationships that sabotage their self-worth. They grow a new mind but live the same old life, and the dissonance eats them alive. Because once your soul expands, it becomes painful to stay small. So don't just upgrade your beliefs, upgrade your ecosystem. You can't build a mansion on a cracked foundation. You can't live like you're destined while thinking like you're desperate. You have to clean house energetically, mentally, physically. Ask yourself, are my daily actions worthy of the future I claim I want? Do my habits reflect where I'm going or just where I've been? Am I surrounding myself with people who call me higher or people who normalize my excuses? Because it matters. Your energy is currency, your attention is fuel, and the average world will rob you blind if you don't guard your gates. You can't allow every opinion into your space. You can't respond to every message. You can't engage every invitation. That's not rudeness. That's leadership. That's choosing to protect your mission over entertaining every moment. Because you are no longer available for anything that doesn't move the needle. And that doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. You are clear that every second spent in confusion is a second stolen from creation. You are clear that half-hearted energy creates half-hearted results. You are clear that access to you is a privilege, and only those who match your future get a front row seat in your present. This is your new level, where you no longer chase alignment, you enforce it. Where you no longer hope for energy, you protect it. Where you no longer wish for elevation, you live it. And with that level comes responsibility. You can no longer blame your past. You can no longer blame your boss. You can no longer blame your parents, your town, the algorithm, or the weather. Not because those things didn't affect you, but because they no longer define you. You've crossed the threshold. You've walked through the fire. Now you rise. With decisions that reflect your destiny, with boundaries that reflect your self-worth, with daily action that reflects faith, not fear. Because this is where most people break. They wait until they feel like it. They wait until it's convenient. They wait until someone else joins them. But you move regardless. You rise even when it's hard. You create even when you're unsure. You lead even when you're still healing. That's not pretending. That's power. And the world will feel it. Not because you told them, but because you became it. And when you become it, they'll know. They'll feel it in your presence, in your clarity, in your unshakable conviction. Because you can't fake alignment. And you can't stay average once you've truly remembered who you are. When you stop living on autopilot, something radical happens. You no longer see life as something that happens to you. You see it as something you're sculpting in real time, with precision, with intention, with power. Because once your inner world evolves, your outer world has no choice but to follow. And that's when the tests arrive. Not to destroy you, but to reveal whether you've truly shifted or whether it was just a mood. Because the universe will ask, can you hold your boundaries when they're tested? Can you stay committed when results are delayed? Can you maintain vision when no one understands you? This is where average people default back to the code. They say things like, I guess this wasn't meant to be. Maybe I'm not ready yet. It's too hard. It's just not my time. But those aren't reasons. They're reflexes of a mind still programmed to avoid uncertainty. But you're not in that loop anymore. You've recoded yourself to respond, not react. To pause, to breathe, to decide from power, not panic. Because the truth is, success doesn't come to the most emotional. It comes to the most emotionally intelligent. The ones who can feel the fear and still move. The ones who can process the trigger and still respond with grace. The ones who can face resistance and not make it personal. Because your power is not in avoiding adversity. It's in knowing who you are in the middle of it. That's the real programming upgrade. When your default settings go from, I'm overwhelmed, to I'm focused. What's the next step? From why is this happening to me, to what is this teaching me? From I'm afraid of failing, to I'm about to learn something that will multiply my capacity. This is how elite minds operate. They do not avoid difficulty. They expect it and they're trained for it. They don't rely on perfect conditions. They rely on mental conditioning. And mental conditioning is a choice you make daily. It's how you talk to yourself, how you interpret discomfort, how you frame failure, how you lead yourself through the storm. Because storms will come. But storms aren't problems, they're mirrors. They show you where the code is still fragile, where you still hesitate, where you still need reinforcement. Use them. Welcome them. Not because they feel good, but because they reveal the gap between who you are and who you're becoming. And once you see the gap, you no longer resent the process. You lean into it. You say, this isn't breaking me. It's building a version of me I've never met before. And that version, that's the one the world's been waiting for. Not the polished version, the powerful one. The one forged in clarity, in chaos, in consistency, in consciousness. That version doesn't live in fantasy. It lives in the grit of daily repetition. In the focus you bring to the present moment. In the way you show up when no one is watching. And when you show up like that, you don't chase alignment, you radiate it. You don't hope to be chosen, you choose yourself again and again until there's no doubt left in your energy. You become magnetic not because you speak louder, but because your stillness speaks for you. This is when your world begins to shift, quietly at first, then suddenly, then all at once. Because when the inner structure is solid, the external results are inevitable. You've outgrown average, you've rewritten the code, and now you've become undeniable. Once you become undeniable, once the code is rewritten, once you've embodied this identity in thought, word, and action, the challenge becomes something new. Can you sustain it? Not once. Not when it's convenient, not when you're praised, but consistently, especially when the spotlight fades, when the pressure rises, when results take longer than expected. Because here's a truth most won't tell you. The biggest threat to your greatness isn't failure, it's fatigue, it's friction, it's the long, invisible stretch of time between planting and harvest. This is where people retreat. Not because they're weak, but because they never learned to hold the frequency of their new identity without external reinforcement. They start strong, they speak affirmations, they light up with vision, but when nothing happens in a week, when the views are low, when the money doesn't show, when the support goes silent, they revert. Back to old habits, back to old emotions, back to that familiar identity that whispers, "See, I told you it wouldn't work." But you've come too far. You didn't do all this to return to default just because the results lag behind your expectations. You didn't rebuild your identity just to rent it when it's easy and abandon it when it's hard. Because this version of you, the architect, the builder, the awakened force, understands something critical. Delay is not denial, silence is not failure, and absence of applause is not absence of progress. Growth lives in the invisible. It lives in the days when you show up tired but show up anyway. It lives in the moments when you question the path but don't quit the mission. It lives in the seconds between the doubt and the decision to override it. And every time you stay faithful to the identity you've worked so hard to install, you deepen the neural pathways that say, "This is who I am now, not sometimes, not when I feel like it, always." That's power, because anyone can start, few can sustain. And fewer still can sustain with peace. Because peace isn't passivity, peace is poise under pressure. Peace is knowing that the storm doesn't change the structure, it reveals it. Peace is emotional maturity. It's saying, I don't need my external world to validate my internal alignment. That kind of peace, it's magnetic, it's rare, it's what makes leaders. Because most people don't just want results, they want certainty. And when you radiate certainty, not by shouting, but by being, you become the kind of presence that shifts rooms, raises standards, and makes people rethink their limitations. So hold your identity with grace. Hold your focus with precision. Hold your power with humility. Yes, there will be seasons of silence, of delay, of discomfort. But remember, a seed doesn't panic underground. It pushes, it anchors, it expands invisibly at first, then all at once. So must you. Because when you build something real, it takes time. But what you're building is forever. You're not chasing moments, you're constructing momentum. And when that momentum compounds, when belief becomes behavior and behavior becomes identity and identity becomes your new baseline, you don't just have power, you are power. Once you've anchored your new identity, once you've proven to yourself that you can withstand the silence, the delay, the pressure, you begin to notice something extraordinary. Your reality starts to shift without force. Not because you chased harder, but because you finally aligned deeper. Because energy doesn't lie, and once your internal operating system upgrades, your outer world can't help but respond. You begin to attract differently. Not out of desperation, but out of resonance. The right people start appearing. Not because you begged, but because your frequency now filters the room. The right opportunities show up. Not because of luck, but because you finally see them. You're no longer blinded by old limitations. The right ideas flow to you. Not because you're more creative, but because you've cleared the static. And here's the key. You didn't just raise your standards, you became the standard. You became the benchmark for how life must treat you. And everything that used to drain you, derail you, distract you, no longer holds a charge. You don't entertain chaos because you don't emit it. You don't argue with limitation because you no longer identify with it. You don't chase validation because your presence is enough. That's not ego, that's energetic congruence. You've stepped into alignment so clean, so certain, so committed that anything less simply doesn't register. You've trained your nervous system to feel safe in your greatness. No more self-sabotage, no more shrinking, no more negotiating your worth in exchange for belonging. You belong to yourself. And that's the only membership you'll never revoke again. From this space, you don't have to beg life to bless you. You're too busy being a blessing to your own mission. From this space, you don't manipulate or control. You trust timing, you take bold action, and then you let it land. Because manifestation isn't magic, it's magnetic alignment. When your thoughts match your actions and your actions match your identity, and your identity matches your standards, life has no choice but to meet you there. Not overnight, not always as expected, but always on time. Because you've stopped operating from fear. You've stopped asking life, do I deserve it, and started asking, how do I embody it now? And you embody it in how you speak, in how you walk, in how you think, in what you allow, in what you release, in what you repeat. And as you embody this new level, day after day, conversation after conversation, boundary after boundary, you begin to realize something powerful. You are no longer the version of you who started this journey. You are no longer seeking transformation. You are the transformation. You are the living proof that programming can be rewritten, that destiny can be claimed, that average can be outgrown. You look around and you see it in your space. Your room is cleaner, your calendar is clearer, your circle is tighter, your habits are sharper. You look inside and you feel it in your silence. Less noise, more trust, less fear, more fire. You don't panic when things shift, you pivot. You don't collapse when plans change, you adjust. You don't wait for the green light, you are the green light. This is the essence of becoming unstoppable. You no longer need evidence to act. You act and let the evidence catch up. You no longer chase success. You calibrate your identity so success chases you. Now you've crossed the threshold. You're no longer the seeker. You've become the source. But here's the question that will define the rest of your life. Can you hold your power without losing your presence? Because power isn't just about reaching new heights. It's about staying there without falling into ego burnout or illusion. Average people touch power, then self-destruct. They relapse into old patterns. They fear their own greatness. They sabotage the very thing they once begged for. But you are building something sustainable. You don't just want the spike of success. You want the substance of it, the kind that lasts, the kind that breathes without force, the kind that becomes your baseline. And that kind of power requires a final upgrade. It's the upgrade from achievement to embodiment. Because chasing success will get you there, but embodying it is what keeps you there. So how do you embody it? You don't just do powerful things, you live in a powerful way. You move with awareness. You make decisions not from scarcity but from vision. You stay calm in rooms filled with chaos because your inner world is no longer dictated by noise. You stop trying to impress because your life expresses who you are. This is when you stop performing for significance and start living from significance. Because you finally remembered, you are not here to prove, you are here to build, to serve, to lead, to last. That's legacy. And legacy isn't something you write in your will, it's something you leave in every space you've ever entered. It's in the way you speak to a stranger. It's in the way you keep your word when no one's watching. It's in the boundaries you set, the peace you carry, the fire you ignite in others, not by force, but by example. And you maintain this not by perfection, but by ritual. The ritual of clarity. You return to your vision daily. You remind yourself who you are becoming and why it matters. The ritual of solitude. You protect space to listen to yourself, because the moment you stop listening inward, you start drifting outward. The ritual of refinement. You audit your time, your energy, your focus. You update your systems before they collapse. You evolve proactively, not reactively. Because the world doesn't get easier, but your standards get sharper. Your filters get tighter. Your focus gets cleaner. And the cleaner your focus, the faster your results. The quieter your ego, the louder your impact. You now carry a kind of silent authority. Not because you say the right things, but because you live what others still fear to speak. You've become a lighthouse. Not swayed by the waves, not dimmed by the storm. You stand tall because you remember your foundation. It was built in fire, in silence, in hours no one clapped for. And now you're unshakable. You are no longer becoming, you are. And from this place, you will rise without rushing. You will shine without shouting. You will inspire without effort. Because your life is the message now, your being is the invitation, and your walk is the proof. There will come a day when someone looks at you, your calm, your clarity, your conviction, and they'll ask, how did you become that version of yourself? And you won't point to a single moment, you won't mention luck or timing or a viral breakthrough. You'll smile and remember the decision. That one quiet decision when no one believed, when no one clapped, when nothing looked certain, but you moved anyway. That's when the world changed. Not outside of you, but within you. That's when you stopped asking for permission. That's when you stopped repeating the past. That's when you broke the loop and rewrote the code. And from that moment on, your life became yours. Not borrowed, not inherited, not recycled. Yours. And what came next? Everything. A new frequency, a new flow, a new normal, a new you. One who doesn't just read the books but becomes the lesson. One who doesn't just visualize the dream but lives it. One who doesn't fear the darkness because you now glow in it. Because here's what you've learned. Power is not found in noise, power is found in ownership. The quiet ownership of your story. The full acceptance of your path. The unapologetic embodiment of your calling. No more hiding, no more shrinking, no more waiting for the world to make room. You build the room, you are the permission. You are the proof. And if someone like you with your history, your battles, your past can rise, then maybe, just maybe, you weren't here to be average after all. Maybe you were here to lead, to build, to heal generations, to be the blueprint. Maybe you were here to become a walking reminder that greatness isn't gifted. It's chosen, it's built, it's lived. So live it. Without apology, without delay, without doubt. The program has been rewritten, and you're not becoming anymore. You're here. Welcome home.